as medication. We're medicating ourselves with food. We're eating to calm down our anxiety. Usually we're eating and ripping and tearing the food because we want to rip and tear somebody who's giving us hell. Literally, it does. We eat and we chew and we grind and we bite. And it's sure they feel good to work your jaws. But you know what? Your feeling of hunger persists. It doesn't go away. You can eat all night long. You don't really feel hungry, but you don't feel satisfied. So you really are transferring your thoughts from the real issues to just getting caught up in the motor act of eating. So that's a very common, also with the media broadcast, eat, 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 eat. There's that kind of cultural phenomenon taking place. The Egyptians knew that the key to health was through dietics. Now I'm a physician and an African physician, and I've seen hustler physicians. They can be intent upon cleaning you out at death. Whatever money you have, if your lawyer didn't get it, the doctor will. The majority of bankruptcies in this country, personal bankruptcies, are done to pay medical bills. Go into a hospital, stay in the hospital 1 week, $25,000. $5 for an aspirin. $20 for a Band-Aid. Hustle, big time hustle. And then when they serve you food in the hospital, it's the biggest hustle in the world. You say, how am I going to get healthy on this? So there's great need for improvement in all that region. But again, the frequency of feeding, the kind of foods that you eat, vegetarian products, certainly eating foods of color, the green leafy vegetables, critical. Now to get more specific to it, and it is possible. You want to get some books on by Lyle Africa. He was a very well-known herbologist out of South Carolina. There's also some brothers coming out of New York, brothers and sisters coming out of the West Coast as well. You'd also may want to consider the issue of cell salts as some kind of the issue of not taking large amounts, but very small amounts to effect balances. And knowing that there's certain foods for each person of each zodiacal type, if you will. So certain personalities use more of a certain kind of mineral effect, if you will. That's more speculative. I have to search that out for. But I think there is great truth to that. And I just have to come out myself, become competent even to address it fully. And I'm still growing to know. More to the melanin question. If you eat more melanated foods, you will prolong your life. So you would eat foods that are black beans, for example. Powerful. Now you don't have to always get the gaseous byproduct. Just soak your beans all day long and cook them all day long. And that'll take care of your gas. Otherwise, it may be rough. Nonetheless, the black beans, the foods that are high in tryptophan, particularly for the pineal, tryptophan, bananas. That is the precursor of serotonin and melatonin. With serotonin later gets 2 more enzymatic steps, becomes melatonin. So you want to eat a fair number of bananas, plankton especially. Another dietary issue, and probably the most important one to consider, is the quality of light itself. We don't often consider that light, sunlight. How many of us watch what kind of moonlight we're exposed to? Most of us don't even get exposed to moonlight. But for African people, moonlight is essential. Yes, full moonlight, new moon, and full moon. Essential. Essential. Especially the full moon of July and the full moon of January. Those, especially. Full moon after the birth of the sun, or the winter solstice, and the summer solstice, the lowest part in the sky and the highest point in the sky. Those are times of very high pineal melatonin release. So sunlight and moonlight are absolutely critical to try to key into in terms of what kind of exposure that you're going to receive. Along with that question of light, the whole issue of energy form in general, especially some of you well know, music. What kind of music do you feed yourself? Do you give yourself a half hour of a delicious trance-inducing melanated sound? So while you're even in the body, you can just sit back and just listen to it. Just feel yourself just go on. Recharge. Induce a trance state with music. Smells. How many fragrances have you smelled? The oldest nerve in the body are the olfactory nerves. Smell. Pay attention. And throughout the coffin text and pyramid text, elaborate discussion to incense and fragrances. Elaborate discussions to what kind of incense to put around you as a means of inducing a state of trance. Touch. How does it feel? But of course, the most important food of all being love itself. The love between your parents, your children, and especially your mate. Your mate is the mirror of your soul. If she wants to shoot you down, take you down. She wants to raise you up. If he wants to shoot you down, he can shoot you down. If he tells you, you are the queen of the universe, then you bring online queen tape. Oh, you play the queen tape. He says you are the king of the universe. Then you bring online, open the door to the king tape. But if they say you're something less, then you're feeding yourself bad food. So I guess the whole point in that discussion is that the line of direction of what doors you choose to access is critical. What room you go into is critical. Now, once you're in the room, you're going to be blessed. You got married to rock and roll. But please try to shape the doors that you move yourself into. With certain foods, you can notice that certain foods you're feeling heavier, just down. Other times you say, oh, I don't know why I'm just clicking and skipping today. It's just on it. Maybe a host of factors, but clearly you see, if I can ever get that combination of food to work for me again. Now you can pay attention to what state you're in by just observing what you release into the commode. You can tell if you've been on time. You can tell by looking at what goes in. If it floats, if it doesn't float, you got a problem. If it's malodorous, then you know, oh, tremendous need for improvement here. Yes.
Yes, Dr. King, a couple of years ago, I was reading African Origins of Biological Psychiatry at the same time that I was reading Volume 1 of Medu Natur by Rodman Nefer. Now, he talks about the world being ruled by left hemispheric thinking people. Now, the question, I think I read something in your book about the calcification being related to the operation between the left hemisphere and the right hemisphere.
Yes.
Okay, so I was rambling on about this last week with, just a roadie. So he asked me, well, if that's true, if the calcification affected and made Europeans less hemispheric, why did it have to end up on the left hemisphere as opposed to the right?
Okay, that's a very good point. it out a little bit. The left hemisphere is the part that's involved in logical thinking. You know, straight line, 1 + 1 makes 2, 2 + 2 makes 4. And only deal with the surface of things. Doesn't deal with feelings, doesn't deal with intuitions, only deal with concrete materiality. Right brain, just the opposite. Analogic, 1 + 1 is a divine 3. Love, romance, intuition. The left brain is also said to be the male side. People who have been found that men and also mathematical abilities are more left brain orientated. When you compare people who have XY chromosome, there's a male chromosome, they tend to have more of this left brain by psychological testing. People who have XX or females have more right brain. People who have XYY or an extra Y and even more left brain. So there's some support for that. The statement of this being a left brain culture is a statement that it is a white male-dominated culture. And here we go back to Leonard Jeffries' two cradle theory, and I'm talking about Leonard Jeffries. It's a patriarchal, white, homosexual culture. Let's be thorough with it. Thorough with it. Greece was a white homosexual culture. Rome was a white homosexual culture, in which white males value the sexual love of other males over that of even a female. They did not allow her to vote or to hold property. In Greece, by the way, less than 10% of the people were citizens. They had their own property. 90% plus were slaves. So whoever wants to deify Greece as an example of a human model is crazy. White folks were slaves in Greece. 9 out of 10 of them were slaves in Greece. Even though the majority of the people who were in Greece before the whites were black. And Circe was the black goddess. So we get another story on that. But so the long story made short is that the Inquisition, these are also important things to keep in mind, that right before 1492, white boys in Europe were involved in the burning of white women to the stake as witches. Then they went to black men and black women. So that was their fear of the white female. Their fear of their own undeveloped right brain. So that's a critical point of history. Now on the other side, I'm not going to let her off the hook because she raised him. And she didn't stop him. So if you're not part of the solution, you're part of the problem. So don't try to play me out on that. No, they ain't buying that one. No, I'm not coming here, Miss Ann. You have anything for me? It is my African queen that we're here to protect and to liberate. So back to the point of the right brain, in the African culture, the Africans were about matriarchy, not female domination, but to respect reality. She is half of me. And that's my mama and my family, I know for certain. It was Big Mama Nancy. I never met her. They still talking about Big Mama Nancy. What she said ruled in Natchitoches, Louisiana. Ain't no doubt about that. They still talking about Big Mama Nancy. They talking about Ivory Williams and Camille with it to this minute. So that they were glorified because she played a lovingly mother role. She gave good raise. They talking about like Paulette. She's a supreme lady who raised our children and raised us and took us to heaven when they want to, please. But long story to be made known, a woman had property rights, she could vote, and inheritance took place with the female line. But when you got to that ice age of culture where you no longer were the one bringing in vegetable products as food, that it was mainly all the food was animal products, you were chasing the herd, then it shifted and became a patriarchal, what is called a patriarchal culture based upon the using of animal food as 90% of the food stuff. Now, In that culture, white males clearly dominated and clearly oppress white females and try to pattern things to this day. It doesn't matter if they're using white females with the illusion of equality. Black women fighting for equality, so the white woman says, well, we have to give them equality before we give you equality. So bottom line, I have no equality. Bottom line is that I am still the majority in the prisons in America, which are being built at a phenomenal rate right now. I'm still the one who's being self-medicated on crack cocaine. Because I can't even afford a psychiatrist, let alone pay to get help. And can't hope to find one that can even talk to me. And I can find many very powerful therapists in the community, but many times they're being asked to see 20 plus clients a day. 30 minutes apiece, please. Be serious. Ain't doing a good job with that, but they got an overwhelming caseload. In other words, the system is not even meant to treat. It's meant to fail. That's just a little game. Talking about we trying to get somebody service. But I know we got another question, I'm going to move on, but let me just bring to a closure on this one, is that you hit a major point. The pineals in the midline between the left and the right brain, and in fact, a woman's job is to learn, one of her major tasks in life, some say, is to learn. She's born into her right brain. She learns her left brain side through her man. A man learns his right brain side through his woman. And then you bring along the unit of both and every other unification.
Yes, we don't want to have you close unless you're ready to close.
Oh, no, I'm by no means.
Okay, well, we're not ready, but what we would like to do, the Florence Jackson Academy, excuse my bad.
That we should, you know what the saying is? You reach until it hurts, and then you give some more on top of that. Because that is an attack against your community, against our community, not just, I'm part of this too. If there were no place for us to be, we wouldn't be here now. And I don't know but a place to have been here 17 years, that has raised at least 2 generations. So that one should really give, and to pass the point, you got to make a sacrifice. Have to make a sacrifice. And we look at what has taken place now, is that we have moments in which we establish institutions and they kind of recede, and the other side is constantly attacking without fail. And when you lose a few good institutions, then things, I look at the way things are now, things are worse now than what they were 20 years ago, for certain. Much worse. Much worse. So this is a must. A must. And perhaps you want to bring it back again right before the end of tonight as well, at the final close of tonight. You might want to bring back the collection part, because that's critical. Yes.
Yeah, really enjoyed your presentation.
Yes.
Thank you for sharing with us. You made a statement about radio waves and melanin.
Yes.
Could you elaborate on that more in terms of the radio waves and the implications in the spiritual sense?
Oh yeah. Melanin is a doorway through which energy forms of many different forms are converted into other forms. And certainly light in the electromagnetic spectrum, which covers a huge range from cosmic waves right on down to heat, red on the other end, with the radio waves being a certain part, and certainly the visible spectrum other part, and TV waves and X-rays and so on up a scale. For example, that melanin, as is informational, it's such a fantastic energy conversion unit. For example, in your eyes, when light passes through the pupil of the eye as particles or photons, it hits the receptors, which are made up of rods and cones. Rods for black and white vision, cones for color vision, rods rhodopsin, cones opsin. The photoreceptor pigment captures the light. It then passes off the top of that rod or cone down to the surface or the epithelium, and right there is melanin. Melanin pulls the photon out of the receptor, converts it into an electrical charge which passes through the rest of the retina into the optic nerve. So it converts it from a particle of light to a chemical charge. And it does that because one end of the melanin molecule has a positive pole, the other end has a negative pole. There are two major planes in the molecule, there are two major events that take place. It also attracts a large number of metals, iron being a primary example, manganese, another example, calcium, extremely heavy binding of calcium. In a similar fashion, melanin does the same thing in the inner ear, where sound waves are converted, acoustical pressure waves are converted into electrical impulse. Melanin is present in 12 pigmented centers along this black nerve tract in the brain stem. It's also present in the dura mater, or the covering of the brain. Now here one would raise the question, also in the P arachnoid, one would raise the question, in those sites, is melanin transducing or converting radio waves that pass through the skull and then converted into an electronic signal that is then being picked up by other decipher units in the brain or other melanin centers. Melanin is present in the pineal gland, and the pineal gland is sensitive to magnetic fields. Birds fly where they may because of their pineal gland's ability to sense the magnetic field of the earth and track along the magnetic field of the earth and plot its move. And we feel vibrations. I walk and talk to my wife. Before she says a word, I can feel her vibe. We talk about love and empathy and being able to quote black people before the person even starts lying. Before you open their mouth, you know where they're coming from. It's just a game. Even before you start that, you've already turned on your X-ray vision. So in terms of the magnetic field effects, conversion of photon or light, sound waves, there's clear-cut evidence about that. In terms of the radio waves, I'm just raising that as a question because it certainly can absorb across the entire electromagnetic spectrum and also the radio spectrum. So that's just a real event. In terms of it being able to translate it into information, that's a question. But we have a clear-cut observation that African people are telepathic. I call sister on the radio show. I'm calling from Durham, North Carolina. She's here in Atlanta. And before we got to the next question, the thought came to me, well, it's going to be the pineal. So we just went on to the pineal and we are how many hundreds of miles distant? How many hundreds of miles distant? So those radio waves, telepathic waves, what kind of carrier wave might telepathy move through? I think it's probably a faster rate than that of radio waves or TV waves. It's probably more toward the cosmic rays. And so the fact that the European has been able to document his machines are not adequate to receive. That's, when they said the pineal was vestigial, it's only because their techniques of analysis were too crude to measure something that fine. It remains so still. So it's a question of technology, not is the subject matter real or not. We have just too much observations. Way, way too much. And again, the purpose of the mysteries, some have said, was to develop precisely the use of the extrasensory powers, to be conscious while moving in the other dimensions, and especially upon return to the material realm. To consciously be able to teleport and materialize and dematerialize in another dimension. To consciously be able to project my thoughts and to have communion with the immortals. It says in George James Thornton Legacy that in the three ways the student, first was neophyte, second was the intelligent, and third was the immortals, in which you had conversation with gods. Not the God. That was another step to come. But with the gods. And you had unity with light. Didn't see yourself separate from light, but could be could envision that part of yourself that was a light body. Brother talk about being able to sense that part, the dark, the black dot within you. That's the light. So that's real. So we are really some trans-physical beings. And I don't want to sound just so kind of distant. How does one go about developing this? By studying science to train your left brain and living a virtuous life to train your right brain. And by training both left and right at the same time, you brought about a union of the opposites, which you bring on that midline between the two, the third eye, or the eye of Haru. Indians call it the eye, the third eye. We call it the eye of Haru. That's the correct name, the eye of Haru, eye of Horus. So you do it by study of arithmetic and geometry and mathematics and rhetoric and logic and practicing the 10 virtues, freedom from resentment when experience of persecution or wrong, and very, 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 very critical. What is your thing? What's your thing? What are you put here to do? Why did the Creator send you here, God, to come to the material realm of hell? And what are you supposed to make divine and to transform hell into heaven on earth? What's your thing? What do you do perfectly? And when you do it, you feel chills run up your spine. You don't mind sweating for it. You might mind it, but you just stay with it. And when you do it, you feel that your life has meaning, has purpose. And the community benefits from your struggles. So that, and you also associate with other people who do this, who are in the same kind of specialization. So you can share skills and talents. Having control of your emotions, control of your actions, having courage, having perseverance, finding a teacher, believing that you can be taught yourself, and being ready for initiation 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Say 24/7? There it is. So that kind of maneuver is right brain, left brain. Bring them online at the same time. To kick it on up to real time, high style. Yes. Hotel.
Yes, could you elaborate on melanin in the Halley's Comet?
Oh, now you want to take it on to a cosmic thing. Cosmic thing. Oh, you're just going through a cultural revolution and you're having some kind of grandiose thoughts about African contributions. You know, this is just a stage of development for each culture, and we have it, we've seen others, and you've got a long ways to go. Black man. Shut up, chump. You're lying again. You're tricking again. Truth is, melanin is not a local earthly thing. It's a cosmic kind of thing. It's a universal factor. You have no evidence to show that. Speak, universe. You are the record. Halley's Comet, as it passes into the interplanetary system, has a tail. When 3 or 4 satellites were sent from Russia, from Japan, and from Europe, here's what they saw. You can go and get a copy of Scientific American, which has several articles on the Halley's Comet at the time. They were printed during that year the Halley Comet's passed, about 2 years ago. They said that it looked like a donut or like a barbell with 2 balls and a centerpiece in the end. These flyby space, really just little flyby cameras, that's all, and radios, passed by and noticed this. The surface of the Halley's Comet was jet black. Said, oh, it's covered by black plastic film. And as it passes near the sun, it gets heated up. And what we're seeing is that black coating on the top ionized. No, you're seeing it get hot. It ain't burned a thing. And we're seeing that trail is just a trail of melanin in space. The Oort cloud, O-R-H-T, is a cloud of ice balls that surround the entire solar system. It is the skin of the solar system. It is covered in black. So as those little balls, which are ice balls of water, break free by either gravity, by the outer planets, or other kinds of suns passing nearby, they then fall into the center of the solar system, and that's what we see as a comet. So those ice balls are melanin-containing ice balls. Where does the melanin come from? Well, my sisters and brothers, they know that. It is found in the interstellar gas clouds that are hundreds of millions of light years across. Can you get that? A melanin cloud of gas that is light years across. Blackness that deep, that thick. It is from this kind of cloud that stars form and planets. So in other words, stars and planets come from interstellar gas clouds containing complex organic melanin molecules. Where does the carbon come from? The carbon comes from the core, the center of a star. As stars are formed initially from helium from the so-called Big Bang, and then they are pressed by fusion into more complex molecules, there comes a point where the core of the star becomes carbon. At that point, it goes supernova, and the center is then erupted, and then it goes into a white dwarf thereafter. And that carbon core is thrown out into space, and that becomes the cloud. So the carbon that makes up our melanin came from the center of a star. That's how deep it is. Deep it is. And then from interstellar gas cloud from which other stars later form and planetary bodies and comets like Halley. Now, one last little note on that. Come June 20th, 1994, a comet will pass close, about 6 p.m. in the evening. No, about 10 something in the evening. Will pass 7 parts, 17 fragments of a comet that passed close to 2 years ago. Well, these 17 heads or fragmented parts of the comet will impact upon Jupiter with the force of hundreds of millions of nuclear bombs in that same day. Question comes, what will take place on June 20th? Maybe it'll just be a passing item. I doubt it. But long story made short is that the melanin that is present on the planet's surface comes as dust flowing through the atmosphere from stellar bodies that have come close. So that dust that we see coming through the atmosphere is black. Contains new genetic material moving into another whole life sequence of life forms. So again, it's the universe. It's not just Africa is certainly black. Earth is black. This is a cosmic standard. We know that we didn't just come upon this just now. If you are a Muslim and you go on your Hajj to Mecca, you will go around the Kaaba, which in the northeast corner has a black meteorite containing melanin as a site of worship. You're worshiping life itself. You're studying melanin, the cobblestone in Mecca. So I'm just saying this, that again, that we can look at nature. Nature is a lovely library. Nature does, you can't That's why I think it was just so absolutely silly and so short-ranged, as if black people would not wake up and read one day. Please. You're going to lie about the libraries, and nature itself is the biggest library of all. And though you couldn't read it, your mother and father can. And mama and daddy are waking up now. And they said, oh, let me reach for that book. Well, Jones, you've been tricking. I told you about that, boy. Now come here. Let me take care of you right quick. So this is a judgment day kind of thing.
Yes, I'd like you to comment on the total well-being, wellness of our people. Specifically, melanated people are clearly more vulnerable to various chemical dependency.
Yes.
I'd like you to respond to that biochemically.
Sure.
And then further, I'd like you to really give me some direction to direct psychiatrists and psychologists to a truly African
Sure.
psychology.
Okay, so I'll do my best. That's a tall order, and the other scholars who are in the same pursuit, sisters and brothers who are quite illustrious. So don't hear me as being one. I add a few comments, and you have to join with others. The chemical substance abuse or use is really self-medication for chronic depression. And it is a programmed event by the political structure of this planet that has been using heroin and cocaine and who knows what else for several hundreds of years, centuries, to control populations and to control the flow of finance. It is fundamental to populational control of financial markets and the control of people of color. Cho En-lai said he was going to give the heroin right back to the European way they gave it to his people. He even met with Gamal Nasser around this very same issue. The Boxer Rebellion was about France, England, United States, and Germany forcibly forcing China to allow them to import heroin into Canton and morphine to convert their population into heroin addicts, morphine addicts. It's clear cut. So it's a means of control. Crack cocaine is clearly playing upon African sex drive and the need and the desire to have trans physical events. Clearly, it's a clear-cut combination of both of those two items. And it's the biggest joke in the world to talk about a drug war. That's just straight-up hustle. Brothers are no more than middlemen, and so are the Colombians. Straight-up hustle. Those financial markets, the top banks in this world are totally dependent upon drug money. Before cocaine was here, it was and still is heroin and morphine and other addictive medications that have been used. Morphine was around since the time of Kemet. It wasn't used like that. I'm not advocating drug use, but a drug even bigger than that is food. The food additives that are used put cocaine and morphine to shame. They will guarantee you a visit to the doctor's office for cancer. 90% plus of cancers are caused by environmental toxins. But on to the question I think you were trying to drift towards, that is about drug, that you were focusing on. The question about drug use, it's from dreams deferred. The pain of a soul that has a mission in life that didn't believe that they could pull it off. And the rage of, well, if I can't do it, to hell with it. And we're living from moment to moment, day to day, of a zombie-like life. When you drop out the pioneer level to the lower Kundalini level. So it's based upon science. I'm certain it was mapped out before these drugs were introduced. No question about it. But you know what? They're lightweight psychiatrists. They're lightweight psychologists. So here is another truth, trickster. Inside of African people, we have our own internal clocks that are ticking. When those external clocks tick, as you were talking about, brother, certain external events or other external entries take place to activate latent centers. When the higher mind wakes up, that's dead. When the pineal releases its hormones, when the master gland releases its hormones in sequence, all the other apud heart glands line up quick. That's one. So I was looking for an external event. How does one do it without an external event necessarily? A thorough family history. Do the family history in terms of what were the high achievements in that person's life. At what point were they focused on a goal? Look at where they were traveling and what their achievements were, and that's what their true purpose is. Bring them back to that point. You got to retrace. You got to back all the way up. I don't care if it's 20, 30 years. You got to back them all the way up to where they were when they were flying high. And then look at the issues that were present right then when they, quote, lost hope. Usually it's illusionary. Usually they were being tricked, and even though they were being tricked. Usually they doubted self. They were programmed to doubt self when there was no need at all to doubt self. At all. They were being misdirected. They were being lied to. They were being asked to change their focus from the high mind to the low mind. They said, oh, don't believe in melanin on Halley's Comet. But that was the reality. And the mass media was trying to condition them. So that's a key one, is get them back to the original point of focus, get them back on track, look at the issues that were present right at the point where they got thrown off track. Then you're dealing with a whole set of post-traumatic stress syndrome kind of intrusive events. You're also looking for certain models in terms of failure in their family line. Daddy didn't do it, so I know I can't do it kind of rap. Mama didn't do it, I know I can't do it kind of rap. The replaying of traumatic scenarios to crisis solutions. But in that same family, there will usually be periods of high achievement that they will not identify with. But again, one focuses in on that. Whoever is in their family line, their immediate family bloodline, who they identified with strongly, focus them in on that. Make them see, I have traits just like them. And when they display those traits in the present day world, and they try to say, oh, that couldn't be me, you catch them right then and they say, oh no, that is you. That is Mama Lou, and you right now. You're playing on yourself now. And get them not to be so hard on themselves, but say, oh, you just love to wait on your genius. Here it is now. Here, they don't need to hear any more bad knocks. Yeah, they're going to stumble. They're going to test you. They want to see if you love them, even though they stumble. And all that stuff about tough love is BS. A black mother loves her child as long as it is around. And so must we. You don't throw them on the side because they failed 10 times or 100 times. Your love is infinite. Not that you're going to help them to mess up, but you're going to be there as a support. You're going to be there with them. So point out the high achievements. Usually a change in locale is mandatory. You got to pick them up. You got to put them in a new land, around a new set of friends. You're talking new talk. That was a coordination of Islam. They took you out of hell, put you in a house. Fundamental diet, fundamental. Fundamental is clothes. Fundamental is taking those baths twice a day, putting on those fresh fragrances so they can fill the clothes and stand up tall. And especially seeing the light. But usually changing, you can't usually put them back in the same community because the pressures are so great. Temptation is just so great. The program to play themselves again. If it were possible, I firmly believe if I took an African people who are drug abusers and endlessly tired of a nap and took them with me to Kemet for a month, I know my rate of success would be 100%. 100%. Because they're in a new locale, they're away from, they're going to go through withdrawal, that's for certain. You got to feed them some foods to take care, and there are all kinds of withdrawals to go through. But if you shift their focus from the lower, from looking down like that to looking up, you can't change the memory pools of all that has happened or will happen. But if you ask them to look into a different set of doors, very, very, very profound. So diet, change in locale, it's critical, getting them to get in love with a mission in life. And then fundamental to it is the relationship with their mate, their sex objects, and the relationship with their children. Fundamental. So it's a complex kind of thing to be tailor fit for the person. And again, I do not advocate that thing called tough love. I mean, that ain't real at all. I don't buy that one at all. Yes. Yes.
What about the vaccinations that children are given prior to getting into this public school system?
Okay,
How does that affect them?
Okay, that's a real, very important question again. It's, again, in the works done by Francis Cress Wellstein and others, and also in the, there's a videotape, which I'm blocking on the white author's name now, but it said that the AIDS virus was introduced into Kemet under the guise of a smallpox vaccination. Yeah, the Strecker Memorandum. And so that's a very important point. Now, at this point in time, I do not use flu vaccinations at all. Number one, because there's so many variants, by the time you get the new one, you ain't even got anything close to the latest one, so I just get away from that. Some of them I do use only because I'm afraid of my kids getting things like polio, diphtheria. And so you do run a risk factor there that if the government is going to choose to put some kind of other contaminant in the virus, you're going to be exposed. And so that's a real risk factor I think you'd have. But at this point in time, I do use vaccinations for children for school because there's the risk factors of measles, for example, are pretty great. Yes. Hotel.